Hey everybody, how are we doing? This is Wayne Dorban from beautiful, unbelievably pretty Northern Colorado, and we are here for the Success in Environmental Consulting session. And this is a series, or a course, if you want to call it that we are doing that I have a very simple goal, and that is to teach you however I can from my experience to help you if you are interested in having success with environmental consulting. Can you do it? As you see here, how do you do it? And can you make some money? Well, last week I gave a little introductory info I'm not going to do much about other than to just quickly say, you know, I hate people who try to teach about something they haven't done. That happens a lot out there. I had a whole bunch of college professors that did it, and if you guys went to college, you probably did also. I've done this. I was one of the pioneers of the environmental consulting industry back in the mid-1970s, and I was still a college student then, but I got very serious about it in the late 1970s when I was also a college professor, and I was in the right place at the right time, and I was able to start an environmental consulting business with a very small, I have no money, by the way. There's no silver spoon here, so I did it all with what I could put together, which wasn't much myself, and then a very small loan by even those days standards through what's called the FDA, Small Business Administration here in the United States. And another person who became a very early partner with me, and we hired a receptionist, a person to be an admin person. That was 1978. By 1984, we had over 1,000 employees. And we did something that, again, in the U.S. is only done by quickly growing, very successful companies. We went public, which meant that we sold stock onto the stock exchange, and anybody with, I don't know what the minimum you could buy at that point in time was, but let's say $1, even could buy stock and own stock in our company. So, and I have built 3 separate environmental consulting businesses after that one. And I'll explain why did I do 3 more. Why did I just stay with that one? I'll explain that more later, and different things that we talk about. So I have a little bit of experience with this. I've done this. This is not something I'm speculating about. I don't know the numbers, but one of the things that you'll hear me talk about is that I have always liked to have staff, employees, independent contractors, you name it, that work with me in this business, whose ultimate goal is to have their own businesses. And other of my friends and competitors and others said, why do you do that? Why don't you just want somebody to work for you that doesn't really care about how well, doesn't care about ever leaving. They just want to be an employee with you forever. Now, there's a role for those kinds of folks. There's certainly people that never want to have their own business. And you've got to make sure there's places for those kinds of folks. And when we had 1,000 people on our staff, and that business that I founded has 10,000 people today. But when we had 1,000, I would bet only 100 of those, 10% of that 1,000 really did eventually want to have their own businesses. But what I'm more proud of than anything in the 40 years that I've been doing this is those people that went out and formed their own businesses and have successful careers today, and some of them have already retired and sold those businesses and don't have to do any business anymore. But that's what I'm more proud of, that I have more pride in than anything. If some of you could make the decision to do this, can I do this? So yes, By the way, you see that I'm rather nervous with a cursor. I apologize for that. I should stop that. Yes, you can do this. And you can only do it, however, if you have passion, you have a work ethic, and you have some technical knowledge. The technical knowledge is the least important. Here's another thing that I used to tell people. I'm going to make a slide for this later, but right now I'm just going to say it. The best staff, the best people I've ever had that work with me or for me are people that have 4 characteristics. They have a work ethic that is excellent. They have loyalty that is amazing. They have technical skills, which are good. And they have essentially a huge desire to succeed. Which of those 4 do you think is the least important? It's the work, it's the technical skills. I've always found that I can teach people, or others in my team can teach people those. You can't teach very often. Loyalty, ethics, work ethic, and passion. Those have to come from deep inside you. So last week I gave a little bit about a definition of what is environmental consulting. I'm not going to repeat that. And we talked about what areas do consultants work in, and this is, you know, everything, because a lot of people just put consulting in a much smaller box. And we talked about, in the environmental area, the difference between generalists and specialists. And then I talked about these areas: soil, water, air, the built environment, and working with non-human organisms. Oftentimes, that would be ecology. And I stopped on this slide. And this is where we're going to pick up today. Because last time I had several things that I said, if you don't take away much more than what I talk about here, and I gave you, I think, 3 different things. I said those would be the best things you could take away. By the way, I like to answer questions as I move along. And there's been a bunch of you come in since I started. Please put your questions in the box anytime you can. I'm doing this alone tonight. I didn't say that at the start. This is the very first session we've done in the history of EAT that Mark B. from Bangladesh is not here. And I'm going to switch real quickly to another slide. Mark is not here because he is celebrating Eid. And that is a Muslim holiday that celebrates the end of Ramadan. And he takes very few days off, but this was a very important day for him. I have huge respect for it. So I am doing this alone tonight. And so it would be much easier if you guys throw out questions as we go along. And if you want, you'll have some at the end too. But I'll keep looking for them. If I miss your question, don't worry about it. I'll catch up to it. And then also, don't be shy. Tell me where you're at in the world, and then secondly, you can put in why you're at all interested in this topic. What is you trying to get out of this? So if you do both those things, I would greatly appreciate it. So this is this topic that we're going to do right now, which is talking about what specialists do and the scientific process. I'm at least going to spend today on it, but I might even spend next week. I want you to understand the scientific process in an amazingly good way. I want you to know it like it was the back of your hand. And it's important because if you're going to be a consultant and you're going to help people with your expert advice to solve their problems, you've got to understand how you're going to do it. And it's going to involve all of these steps. By the way, this isn't the scientific method. Notice I didn't put that up here. This is the process. And don't don't take this as being the exclusive way in which process in a scientific way can be described. It's what works for me. It's what a lot of people use. And I do believe that you really have to understand it and all steps of it to be successful as a consultant, because it's what you have to use as a thought provoker for yourself to help you provide that proper advice for those clients that you're going to have. All right? So we're going to go through each of these. Like I said, you know, we probably will finish this today, but if we don't, I'm going to let it linger over to next week, and we'll finish talking about it next week. If we do finish it today, what I'm going to go into next week is I'm going to talk a little bit about how you start a business like this. What are the things that you need to be thinking about and doing? And things like, I've already talked about how if you need to get a loan, if you need to raise money, if you need to do it as a second income while you're already earning income somewhere else, what kind of a business form should you make? And this will be applicable wherever you live in the world. There might be different names for it in different places. Should you have a partner? Should you get, what's the right time to have employees? Or should you even have employees? What kind of an office have? Or should you even have an office? All of those kinds of things. Those are the details that we'll talk about probably next week. So, now going into the scientific process, and I'm going to actually be typing in here, and I really would like to get some input from you guys. We're a fairly quiet audience, though, so I don't really know how much I'm going to get. Nobody put anything in about why they're here. So I'm just going to assume that you're here because you want to really learn this. You want to go out there and make money as an environmental consultant yourself. So what do we mean about being a doer versus an observer? Let's start with that, and then actually I'm going to back up to that slide right before here. Observer versus doer. And as a consultant, you need to do both. And you need to observe first, create a process, and then be a doer. So observation is a huge skill that you need to have. And you need to do it using all your senses. And here's what's interesting. Most people don't when they're observing. Most people have to really learn to use any of the senses other than their hearing or their eyes. As human beings, our most dominant sense, if we have it, which most of us do, is our vision. Our second most important or dominant sense is our hearing. And then our taste and our smell and our touch are all way less important for us generally as human beings. But I will tell you that if you can learn how to use those three other senses along with your sight and your hearing as an environmental consultant, you're going to be way ahead of the others that are out there. So today, I was out on a run. I think I mentioned that. And one of the things I run around is this beautiful property that I have where I have a whole series of ponds. And I am constantly observing those because I am constantly trying to upgrade them and make them be more ecologically balanced and more appropriate for the uses that I have for them. So it was real easy to observe with my eyes, and I observed a number of things. We're not going to talk a lot about those. It also is fairly easy to hear and get my observations. And so I was, by the way, I will talk about it. So when I was observing with my eyes, I was looking at water levels, looking at water quality, water clarity, excuse me, how clear it was. I was looking at the growth of what are called macrophytes, or plants that are visual in the water. I was looking at algal growth in the water, so the color of the water. I was looking at fish, if I could see them, and I did. And since I did see them, I was looking at their sizes. I was looking at their species, and I did see several different species. I was looking at water level, but all those things. I was also listening because it was a little windy. And I can judge, I've gotten to where I can judge wind velocity by its sound, where I'm at in various different places. So I can listen to the trees and to animals flying and other things, waves in an aquatic system, and I can make a pretty good estimation of wind velocity. I've developed a pretty good sense of touch as an observer in water, and I can tell by just putting my hand into water pretty closely what the temperature is to about a 2-degree Fahrenheit basis, about 1 degree centigrade typically. So I could put my hand in water and tell you within a couple of degrees Fahrenheit as to what the temperature is when it's in a range between freezing, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 degrees Celsius, and about 30 degrees Celsius, or 90 degrees about Fahrenheit. Outside of that range, I'm not very good because I don't do it very often, which is the point. Good observation is learned. You all can gain it. You all can, every one of you. It's a really important skill to have as a consultant. So you can gain and become better and better with all your senses and observing. So we talked about 3 now: seeing, or sight, hearing, and touch. Today I'll describe smell. I was seeing water levels reduce in a couple of our ponds in our system. We have 18 ponds in the system. And where I see that water level reduce, and I know why it is visually, what I'm concerned about is whether when it's reducing, that oxygen levels get depleted. And before I'm going to go in and measure those oxygen levels with tools, I smell. And when a body of water is beginning to have problems with its oxygen, it will have a different smell to it. And I've learned how to observe that smell. And I can detect sulfur odors, I can detect organic gas odors, methane, butane, propane. Butane and propane are human-made gases. Methane is a decay, biological decay generated gas. So today I was using my sense of smell to look at to try to find out whether there was an oxygen problem in these ponds. Finally, taste. I didn't use that one today in this observance process I was talking about. I do use taste a lot, and one of our speakers last week talked a lot about using taste because she was doing a forage walk, a weed walk around our farm here in northern Colorado, and she gave us a little, probably 2-minute lesson about how we could determine whether a plant we had never seen before was poisonous or not. And most of the senses that she was using for that were related to her taste. And so I can do similar things. I can taste water and know what might be wrong with it, or if it was in good condition. I can feel on my taste buds, I can feel how certain solids might be on my tongue, which is an element of taste. Again, all of this is learned. It is not something that you would just inherently have, and you can all get it. So, as a specialist, an environmental consultant, and you could be a specialist in all those areas I talked about previously: air, water, soils, and even more specialist in some of them. And let's say water, you could be a very specific specialist for surface water. And even more, you could be a specialist for streams. And even more, you could be a specialist for year-round streams. And even more, you could be a specialist for water quality in streams. And even more, so you follow it, you can get more and more and more specialist. But you need to be an observer, and you need to understand the scientific process, which involves the combination of observing and doing. doing, I'm going to explain through the process because it'll be a lot easier. So, gosh, people are still coming in. Appreciate it. Enjoy you guys coming in. Please put in the question area two things. One, where you're at in the world. I'd love to know where my audience is from. And second, why are you here? What is it you want to get out of this course? And we are only just beginning it. It's going to be a number of more weeks. So if you put that in there, that'd be great. And then secondly, if you ever have a trouble hearing me or seeing the screen, please just put a 9 in there or say something about that. So now we're going to move into this scientific process in more detail. And as I said, we're going to start out with hypothesis creation. By the way, Marvin from Nova Scotia, I know you, man. You're a regular, so thank you for being here and saying where you're at. So what is a hypothesis? Let's first talk about some definition here. Hypothesis is a idea, I'm going to use that word, an idea that you create about something that you want to gain information on. So your hypothesis could be, as you're looking, I'm going to just put it in the context of what I did today, your hypothesis could be that algal quantities in this pond are higher than they should be, than you want them to be, because there's too much nutrients, too many nutrients that are coming into the pond system. That is a hypothesis. So I could create that as a hypothesis. If I was studying air, and you've probably all heard of smog, or you've seen it. It's when the big cities, most cities in the world have it, and it's a haze, and it's a contamination of air. If you had a hypothesis, and this could be a hypothesis, that smog in Los Angeles is caused by automobile emissions, and the weather that locks the air in the LA basin in, so that as those emissions occur, they get trapped and they don't go out into the ocean, which is right next to Los Angeles. Notice that was a much broader and bigger hypothesis than the one that I gave for a pond. Now let's go the other way, and let's go to a really simple one, and let's do it in the context of a built environment, a building, something that a human being constructed. And let's deal with asbestos, let's say. And a hypothesis could be this simple. I have asbestos, and it is dangerous to building occupants' health. This building has asbestos, and it is dangerous to occupants' health. That's a simple. That's of the 3 different hypotheses that are, by the way,